everyone, it's me, Shemp, always letting you know if you should shelve it or trash it. Now, a couple videos ago, I took a look at a few SpongeBob games with my good friend Review Life. If you haven't seen that video, please consider clicking the card in the top right corner to check it out. In that video, I do specify that that was my first time ever playing any of those SpongeBob games, which shocked a lot of people, specifically regarding Battle for Bikini Bottom. This is the SpongeBob game that everyone played apparently, just not me.
For someone that has no bias whatsoever regarding that game, I was pretty surprised by how well it held up in 2020. It's still a fun, harmless little platformer with a lot of charm and originality, so this got me more excited for SpongeBob Rehydrated. Then I saw more of it. I've already done a video regarding the overpriced collector's edition, so if you want to see that, I'm sure YouTube will recommend it. Before we dive into the review, I'd like to thank THQ Nordic for supplying me with a review code for early access. We'll be playing this game on my PS4 Pro, so you'll know what performance I got out of my machine. So first off, obviously, this is a remake of Battle for Bikini Bottom, but Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is pretty long, so I'll just be referring to it as Rehydrated. With Purple Lamp Studios' robust history of games, they felt like a very odd choice for this project. Heavy Iron Studios is still alive. Kind of. They're also an independent developer, so I really don't understand why they couldn't get them back for this. From the emails that I've seen, they love hearing from their fans about SpongeBob and actually wanted to work on it. I guess Purple Lamp was cheaper? Now, let's get this out of the way first. Yes, the visuals are good. Great even. My biggest complaint about the OG game was how washed out everything was. SpongeBob is a colorful character in a colorful world. Having the colors stripped away from it makes it feel very not SpongeBob. Rehydrated pumps as much color as possible into the world and honestly took my eyes some adjusting. Everyone's character models are so well made. I think this is my favorite 3D version of SpongeBob. I've always said that 2D characters getting 3D models is always a recipe for ugly, but it feels just very natural with these characters thanks to the art style and the animation. That's another thing. The animations are pretty well done too. Sometimes. In-game, it looks great. Cutscenes look good, again, sometimes. It's such a weird mixed bag. I mean, the original game's cutscenes were also pretty mixed, so I guess it just makes sense. The game is running off of Unreal 4, shocker, and it does suffer from all the Unreal Engine quirks you see in almost every game using it. Slow texture loading, pop-in, questionable load times, it's all here. I think gameplay was the big thing for me going into this. I love the way the original game played, I just hated the way the camera controlled and some odd hitbox issues. Rehydrated does give us the modern day camera, thank God, and it really does help with the overall experience. SpongeBob and Co. still control very well, but feel a bit looser. I noticed that jumps had a bit more drift to them when snapping to a different direction. It never affected my platforming in any way, but it was still something that stood out. Speaking of standing out, my God, the technical issues. Me and my friend Super Moon Knight were reviewing this game at the same time and we both ran into the same issues. Him more so than me. His review will be linked in the description below. The main one that stood out to me right away was that every time you die, the game reloads the entire level. Yeah, it doesn't store it in RAM or anything. You can tell that it's reloading the level because whenever you respawn, you can see the textures load in. That, and it takes about a minute or two just to load back to the checkpoint. It's very jarring. Super Moon Knight also discovered that bosses do not reload, and that's a big problem. Battle for Bikini Bottom is kind of structured like Mario 64's progression system. You can complete any level in any way you want, granted that you have the right amount of golden spatulas. So he defeated one of the robot boss fights later on in the game and then completed everything else. In order to see the ending, you need to beat that specific boss after collecting everything else to see the ending. But since he fought that boss first, he can't go back to fight it again to see the ending, which in turn kind of soft locks the game. He's the one that's been finding most of the glitches and bugs in this game. He even found Sandy doing this. Couple that with collision issues, long loading times for every level, weird character swapping for no reason, and whatever this is. It all all starts to pile up. The good gameplay and atmosphere do kind of balance it out in the end, but those problems are still there. But to be a bit more positive, the game is still very fun. This new batch of color added to the world really makes it feel like you're jumping around in Bikini Bottom. I love the flowing seaweed grass and the overall backdrop of the game. It's very pleasing to the eyes. The characters' new models are also way more expressive than they ever were, which also helps sell the game's cartoony art style. Now, I think the biggest letdown for me is that this is a one-for-one remake. SpongeBob Rehydrated doesn't add anything new to the overall package. Yes, it's an HD, but that's it. One could argue that the Insane Trilogy is just a one-for-one remake, but there was more to that package. We got completely new voice acting for all 3 games, all new cutscenes reanimated, and 2 bonus levels. Spyro also had brand new voice recordings, new designs for every dragon in Spyro 1, beautifully animated cutscenes, and even dynamic music. SpongeBob is using the same audio for everything. The music is in stereo now, so there's that. But it's all still the same. All of the voice acting from the OG game is reused here, which is fine. All of the main actors did a great job and the audio quality is fine enough to pass off as modern day voiceover, even though the audio peaks sometimes for no reason. But even the original game had problems, like Mr. Krabs not being Clancy Brown. Everyone thought that they would get him in to record the few lines needed for the game, but apparently even that is too expensive.
That monster has been stinging all my good customers in their poop decks!
Oh, wait, they did add a new multiplayer mode with a boss fight that was cut from the original game, which in concept sounds really cool, but holy fresh hell, this was so last minute. It's literally just a 26 or so level survival mode with you and a buddy. There's no audio for attacks that Robot Squidward does, and the only audio you hear is the ominous battle music and the attacks from the other characters. I felt like I was having a fever dream halfway through because it was so bizarre. It's so last minute that when it ends, it just ends. Me and my fiance were playing it for about an hour, and it started to get fun at the very end when we were getting swarmed. This mode isn't going to hold anyone's attention for more than like 5 minutes. I guess the main question is whether or not this is the definitive version of Battle for Bikini Bottom, and I'd have to say yes. From a consumer standpoint, this is the best and easiest way to experience this game. The original game's price is already going up for whatever reason, and most modern TVs don't support AV cables anymore. From a speedrunning perspective, we'll have to wait and see. That's the big community for this game, and we'll have to see how they interpret this remake. I already know that this is going to have its own separate speedrunning community, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
So what should you do? Shelve it? Or trash it? Well, minus the few bugs and the personal problems I had with it, I can still see that Rehydrated is the best way to play this game, especially for $30. That's an extremely generous price. It's on all consoles, so that's a $30 Switch game right there, which is already hard enough to come by nowadays. If you're a fan of platformers, I highly recommend you pick this game up. So, with that said, shelve it.